Imagine a world where money never existed. Not just a world without coins, bills, or bank accounts, but a world where the very concept of currency was erased from human consciousness. No wallets, no credit cards, no stock markets, just people, resources, and the raw mechanics of survival. At first glance, it might seem utopian: everyone shares, everyone cooperates, everyone thrives. But the reality would be far more radical, and far more fascinating, than anything you could imagine. Because money isn't just a tool, it's the lens through which we measure value, desire, and power. Remove it, and society doesn't just change, it transforms in ways that will shock you. In this world, survival becomes the ultimate currency. Instead of trading dollars for goods, people trade skills, knowledge, and access to resources. Want a home? You need to demonstrate that you can contribute to the community. Hungry? Someone will help feed you if you can repay the favor in work, expertise, or loyalty. The concept of rich and poor no longer exists in monetary terms. Instead, status is defined by usefulness, creativity, and the ability to sustain oneself and others. Radical? Absolutely. Liberating? Undoubtedly. But it's also brutal in a way modern society shields us from. Now, think about the army. Without money, what motivates people to fight? Soldiers aren't paid, they fight for survival, protection, or allegiance to their community. Wars wouldn't be about conquering wealth, they'd be about controlling essential resources: water, food, energy, knowledge. Every military decision would be life or death, stripped of the bureaucratic red tape that allows modern armies to wage war for profit. The brutality would be real, and yet strangely, more honest. There's no incentive to prolong a war for financial gain. The stakes are simply survival and societal protection. Police and law enforcement would also evolve. Without monetary crime, there's no theft, no fraud, no bribery. Yet crime wouldn't disappear, it would take different forms. Conflict over resources, personal grudges, or threats to communal stability would dominate. Law would shift from written codes enforced for profit to natural codes enforced for survival and social cohesion. People would follow rules not to avoid fines but to ensure the collective safety of their group. The morality of enforcement becomes absolute: what endangers the group must be stopped, period. Religion, too, would face a seismic shift. Historically, organized religion has often intertwined with wealth, tithes, donations, indulgences. Remove money, and the power structures of religion collapse. Faith becomes purely spiritual or practical, a system of guidance and community support rather than control through material accumulation. Charitable acts are no longer rewarded with social recognition or afterlife promises, they are necessities, without which survival falters. The purity of belief becomes literal, not transactional. But perhaps the most shocking change would be in human psychology. Desire would no longer be externally quantifiable. People wouldn't chase money, they would chase meaning, mastery, and influence in tangible ways. The obsession with material accumulation would vanish, replaced by a relentless drive to innovate, create, and connect. Yet envy, ambition, and rivalry would still exist, just in new forms. You wouldn't be jealous of someone's mansion, you might envy their knowledge of medicine, their skill with crops, or their ability to mobilize others in a crisis. Society becomes a Darwinian experiment in creativity and utility, where your value is measured not in coins but in your ability to contribute. The turning point in this alternate history is the collapse of financial systems. Without money, governments as we know them could not exist. Politicians are no longer funded, lobbyists vanish, and bureaucracies crumble. Power centralizes not in capitals but in resource hubs, places that control food, water, technology, and energy. Communities form around efficiency and survival rather than taxation and governance. Radical? Yes. Dangerous? Potentially. Liberating? Absolutely. The world becomes a network of interdependent societies where cooperation is survival, and hoarding is a death sentence. Imagine the chaos at first, people accustomed to buying everything suddenly forced to trade skills and labor. Panic would spread. Economies would collapse instantly, leaving cities empty and people scrambling to reconnect with the basic truths of survival. And yet, within a generation, a new system would emerge, a system that rewards intelligence, adaptability, and contribution rather than wealth and greed. It would be harsh, but it would be honest. And those who adapt fastest would not only survive, they would thrive beyond the wildest dreams of our current monetary societies. If this makes you rethink everything you know about value, power, and survival, then you need to hit that subscribe button. Because in the next part, we'll dive into how education, healthcare, and even love would be revolutionized when money no longer exists, and trust me, the results are nothing short of explosive. In a world without money, education becomes the ultimate life skill. Schools funded by taxes or tuition vanish overnight. Instead, learning is a communal exchange, knowledge for survival, mentorship for labor, innovation for loyalty. The smartest people are no longer those with fancy degrees but those who can solve real problems, purifying water, cultivating food, building shelter, healing the sick. Knowledge becomes literally priceless, and hoarding it is considered not just selfish but deadly. Imagine a young engineer trading their understanding of renewable energy for a year's worth of food. Imagine a doctor teaching medicine in exchange for protection for their village. Society would no longer measure intelligence by standardized tests, it would measure it by utility and adaptability. Healthcare, stripped of insurance, money, and bureaucracy, becomes a pure science of survival. Hospitals as we know them wouldn't exist, medical treatment is directly tied to community need and access to resources. Preventive care would dominate, because no one could afford negligence. Every life saved is a contribution to the group, every disease controlled is a triumph of collective intelligence. Yet, the reality is harsh, without a monetary safety net, mistakes are fatal. No money means no bailouts, no experimental drugs for profit, no pharmaceutical monopolies. Medicine becomes honest, raw, and immediate. People live, or die, based on their knowledge, preparation, and the strength of their community. Technology evolves differently in this scenario. Corporations would be meaningless because there's no capital to invest or exploit. Innovation isn't driven by profit but by necessity. Need a bridge to connect two villages? You build it. Need energy to power a settlement? You engineer it. No patents, no competition, no monopolies, just the pure drive to solve problems. The result is accelerated survival-oriented innovation. Some inventions might resemble our tech, others would be completely alien because every idea must pass one test: does it improve life? If yes, it spreads. If no, it dies. Social hierarchy becomes a brutal but transparent system. Without money, influence is measured by competence, courage, and contribution. Leaders aren't elected for charisma or wealth, they rise because they save lives, organize resources, and demonstrate intelligence under pressure. Imagine a general who wins a battle by strategy, not by funding or bribes. Imagine a community elder whose advice prevents famine, not because they collected taxes, but because they studied weather, crops, and animal behavior. Respect is earned, not bought, and every act of deception carries immediate consequences. Love and relationships take a dramatic turn. Without financial pressure, courtship isn't influenced by economic security, it's influenced by character, compatibility, and shared survival skills. A partner's value is not their income but their resourcefulness, empathy, and loyalty. At the same time, survival pressures intensify bonds but also accelerate conflicts. Jealousy isn't about stolen money, it's about stolen knowledge, lost alliances, or access to scarce resources. The dynamics of intimacy and family become primal, practical, and undeniably intense. Culture, too, transforms. Entertainment is no longer a business, it's a communal necessity. Storytelling, art, and music serve as tools for cohesion, education, and morale. Plays and songs aren't sold, they are performed to teach, to warn, to celebrate survival victories. Fame loses its monetary component, it exists purely as a measure of skill, creativity, or the ability to inspire and unite communities. The internet as we know it would probably collapse, no monetized platforms, no ads, no influencers selling lifestyles. Instead, information networks emerge organically, driven by trust and usefulness rather than clicks and profit. Yet the system is not utopian. Human nature does not vanish with currency. Greed becomes greed for control over resources, envy shifts to jealousy of influence, and conflict is inevitable. But here's the radical truth: in a world without money, every struggle is visible, raw, and consequential. Lies are punished immediately, incompetence cannot be hidden, and every action has a tangible effect on survival. Life becomes honest, unfiltered, and unforgiving. Without money, government as we know it collapses instantly. Taxation becomes meaningless, budgets vanish, political campaigns evaporate. The very machinery of governance, parliaments, congresses, ministries, relies entirely on currency. Remove that, and the entire system disintegrates overnight. What remains is raw power. Those who control resources, information, and organization dictate the future. Forget presidents, prime ministers, or senators. Authority belongs to whoever ensures water flows, food grows, and communities are defended. Leaders are no longer career politicians, they are engineers, strategists, healers, and warriors. Think about elections. In our world, they are fueled by billions in campaign spending, lobbying, and media manipulation. Without money, elections are impossible. Leadership isn't voted into existence, it emerges from necessity. You lead not because you've promised things in speeches but because you've proven your worth in crises. Corruption in the traditional sense disappears, you cannot bribe without money. But a new kind of corruption takes its place: manipulation of resources, hoarding of knowledge, control of loyalty. Power is stripped bare, unmasked, and terrifyingly direct. Law itself changes shape. Courts, lawyers, entire legal systems, gone. They are built on salaries, fees, and contracts. Without money, the law becomes tribal, immediate, and brutally efficient. Justice is survival-based. Did your action harm the group? If yes, punishment is swift and often final. Crimes like fraud or embezzlement don't exist. But betrayal, sabotage, and resource theft, those become the ultimate sins. Imagine a society where stealing food isn't just illegal, it's a death sentence, because it endangers everyone. In this world, morality isn't abstract, it's enforced by necessity. Policing transforms as well. No one is paid to enforce laws. Instead, every citizen shares responsibility for maintaining order. Communities protect themselves through collective vigilance. Violence is not hidden behind bureaucracy, it is carried out directly, openly, and with clear consequences. A corrupt officer can't exist, because there is no paycheck to abuse. But brutality still thrives, only now, it's naked, justified by survival rather than policy. The line between justice and vengeance blurs until they are indistinguishable. International relations would also become unrecognizable. Without money, there is no foreign aid, no trade deals, no global banks. Alliances form solely around survival, water-sharing agreements, joint defense against threats, access to fertile land. War ceases to be a matter of profit margins and becomes a brutal negotiation of existence. Imagine two nations clashing not for oil revenues but for the oil itself, to literally power their survival. Diplomacy becomes raw and transactional: we help you, you help us, or we starve together. Religion, stripped of wealth, donations, and institutional empires, returns to its primal role, a unifying belief system. Faith leaders cannot manipulate followers with promises of heavenly rewards in exchange for financial contributions. The only faith that survives is faith that sustains communities, rituals that strengthen unity, morals that prevent chaos, philosophies that stabilize human behavior. Some religions flourish in their purity. Others vanish, exposed as structures that only survived because of wealth and manipulation. Spirituality becomes brutally honest, either it makes life better, or it dies. Now, think about morality in this raw world. In our society, morality is often guided by laws enforced with fines, prisons, and monetary punishments. Without money, morality isn't symbolic, it's survival logic. Lying might not lose you cash, but it could cost you trust, which in this world is priceless. Laziness doesn't just lead to poverty, it leads to death. Every moral choice is amplified. Do you help the group or weaken it? In this way, human ethics are purified, sharpened, and radicalized. You cannot afford hypocrisy because the consequences are immediate. Here comes the brutal twist: without money, human life becomes both more valuable and more expendable. Valuable, because every person is a critical resource of labor, knowledge, and creativity. Expendable, because if you cannot contribute, you endanger the group. There is no welfare system, no pensions, no safety nets. The old, the sick, the weak, either they are supported out of loyalty and compassion, or they are abandoned. Compassion becomes the truest test of a community's strength, not a political slogan. And this is where you have to ask yourself, would you want to live in this world? A society without lies of money, but with the brutal honesty of survival. Where every action counts, every skill matters, and every life is judged not by wealth but by contribution. Or are we too soft, too comfortable, too dependent on the illusion of currency to ever survive without it? Strip away money, and suddenly love is raw, unfiltered, and terrifyingly real. Relationships are no longer distorted by financial security, luxury gifts, or social status defined by wealth. In this world, nobody chooses a partner because they have a big house, a fat paycheck, or an expensive car. Love becomes brutally practical. You choose someone who can protect you, feed you, heal you, or stand by you when survival is on the line. A partner's value isn't in their bank account, it's in their courage, loyalty, and resilience. But here's the dark side: romantic relationships become fragile under pressure. Attraction may start with affection, but survival demands quickly test its strength. If your partner can't contribute, the bond breaks. Divorce lawyers don't exist because marriage isn't a contract, it's an alliance. And alliances only last as long as they are useful or truly meaningful. That's the radical honesty of love without money. The excuses vanish, and what remains is either unshakable loyalty or ruthless abandonment. Family dynamics transform too. In our world, many families are glued together by financial obligations, inheritance, shared bills, parental support. Remove money, and family bonds are tested to their core. Do parents raise children purely for love and survival legacy, or do they abandon them when resources grow scarce? Do children care for their elders out of duty, or do they leave them behind to preserve the group's chances? Without pensions, child support, or welfare, every decision becomes painfully direct. Family either becomes humanity's strongest shield, or its first casualty. Art and culture undergo a revolution. Without money, art can't be bought, sold, or auctioned. No one paints for profit, no one makes music for a paycheck, no one writes to chase royalties. Creativity becomes pure expression or a survival tool. A song is sung to unite a group during hardship. A story is told to teach lessons across generations. A painting is drawn to inspire courage before battle. Fame ceases to be about wealth, it becomes about influence, memory, and the ability to inspire. In this world, the artist is no longer a celebrity, they are a cultural warrior. Entertainment as a business collapses. Forget Hollywood blockbusters, billion-dollar music tours, or billion-view YouTube channels. Instead, entertainment returns to the fire pit, the gathering place, the community stage. Performers don't sell tickets, they earn survival, respect, and food through their ability to captivate, motivate, and unify. Ironically, art becomes more powerful in this world than it ever was in ours, precisely because it can't be bought or sold. It exists only because people need it. And what about ambition? In a society without money, ambition doesn't die, it mutates. People still compete, still envy, still strive to be better than others. But ambition is no longer about luxury cars, mansions, or billionaire status. Instead, it's about becoming the best at something essential, the greatest healer, the most strategic leader, the most innovative builder, the most inspiring storyteller. Prestige doesn't vanish, it intensifies, because it's no longer symbolic. It is survival itself. Even desire itself is transformed. Think about it, in our world, most advertising manipulates desire by attaching it to money. You buy something to feel beautiful, powerful, respected. Without money, there's no advertising, no manipulation. Desire is stripped to its primal form. You desire someone because they are courageous, intelligent, or resourceful. You desire objects only if they directly improve your life. The fake world of luxury for luxury's sake dies instantly. What remains is authenticity, brutal and beautiful. But this world is not kind. Without money, the dream of equality doesn't magically appear. Inequalities still exist, based on strength, intelligence, charisma, or creativity. Instead of billionaires controlling society, the most resourceful minds and strongest leaders dominate. Hierarchies remain, but they are honest. No one is rich because of inheritance or luck, they are powerful because of action, skill, and survival. Is that fairer? Some would say yes. Others would argue it's just another kind of tyranny. And here's the viral question, would you actually want love, family, and art stripped of all illusions, or do we secretly need money to keep these fragile human connections alive? Do we really love people, or do we love the financial stability they provide? Do we value art, or do we just value the price tag attached to it? So what happens when you zoom out and look at the big picture? If money never existed, civilization itself would not resemble anything we know today. Cities as we know them, financial hubs built on trade, banks, and commerce, would never rise. Instead, human settlements would cluster only around vital resources, fertile land, rivers, forests, and defensible terrain. Megacities like New York, London, or Tokyo would be impossible. Instead, the world would be a mosaic of smaller, self-sufficient communities bound not by contracts or taxes but by necessity and trust. Civilization without money doesn't collapse into chaos, it evolves into something raw and decentralized. Power no longer concentrates in global elites but in local leaders, innovators, and communities. Empires as we know them couldn't exist, wars of conquest would happen, yes, but sustaining a massive empire without taxation or currency is nearly impossible. What emerges is a fractured, multipolar world where survival knowledge spreads like wildfire, but centralized control evaporates. In other words, humanity never builds the skyscrapers of Wall Street, but it may build a society far more authentic. But here's the radical paradox, without money, humanity might be both freer and more enslaved. Freer, because nobody can be bought, bribed, or enslaved through debt. Enslaved, because survival chains every person to their immediate usefulness. You can't opt out and live comfortably off investments. You can't retire. You can't inherit security. Every single generation starts from zero, judged only by its ability to contribute. Some will call this justice. Others will call it brutality. Both are right. And what about progress? Many argue money fuels innovation. After all, why invent something if you can't sell it? But this view collapses under scrutiny. Humans don't innovate for cash alone, they innovate because they must. Fire wasn't discovered for profit. The wheel wasn't invented for a paycheck. Vaccines, shelters, and tools emerged from necessity, not Wall Street bonuses. In a moneyless world, innovation doesn't slow, it accelerates. But it's focused ruthlessly on survival, not luxury. There are no $300 designer sneakers, but there are revolutionary methods of growing food in poor soil, purifying water, or defending communities. Humanity might advance slower in consumerism but faster in resilience. Still, without money, the dream of global unity may be gone forever. Trade, commerce, and finance are what interconnected our world into a global village. Without them, humanity fragments into countless tribes. Knowledge sharing may occur, but only when groups trust one another. Suspicion becomes the default, cooperation the rare prize. The Internet in its current form? Impossible. Globalization? A fantasy. Our modern sense of the world collapses into 1,000 local realities. Is that a tragedy, or liberation from the very system that enslaves us today? And here's the hardest truth: money is not real. It is paper, numbers, and symbols, an illusion we collectively agree upon. Without that illusion, humanity would rely only on what is real: food, water, shelter, health, loyalty, and knowledge. That's the uncompromising reality. The entire edifice of modern life, the skyscrapers, the banks, the corporations, the billionaires, rests on something that could, in theory, vanish tomorrow. If money were gone, only truth remains. And maybe that's the most radical idea of all, the idea that we could live without lies, without illusions, without the chains of a system that values digits over lives. So, would a world without money be better, or worse? Would it be humanity's ultimate liberation or its ultimate downfall? One thing is certain: the way we live now is not inevitable. It's a choice. And the day we stop believing in money is the day the world as we know it ends. Now it's your turn. Tell me in the comments what you think. Would you survive in a moneyless world? Would you even want to? And most importantly, what should we explore next? Drop your ideas below, and let's dive into the next radical scenario together.